Dear boomers, I want to follow up with the conviction of Donald Trump. I'm not ever happy that somebody is convicted and probably will not be going to jail, but you never know because of some of the things he had been doing to, false accusations and targeting the jurors and their families and the judge and his family and Michael Cohen and his family and even the guys at Midas Touch, which is a independent news station on YouTube, Midas Touch. I highly recommend it because they tell it like it is. They're young guys. One of Ben Marcellus just got married, and they are such precious souls. And Michael Cohen also has a show on that channel, so I highly recommend it. MidasTouch.com, probably. And so the way I feel about it, the women's rights have been turned back so far that it's important that Donald Trump has a stop sign in front of him and that he doesn't win the election in November. We have so many stories of women who have miscarriages, and the Republican Party wants to catalog these incidences. And if you've had a miscarriage, they're probably going to come knocking at your door to get proof of a miscarriage. Probably need a note from their doctor. Another thing is, if you have an ectopic pregnancy, which is a pregnancy in your tube, these people can't just get immediate emergency care. I was always taught that when there's a pain in the lower abdomen, the first thing is, well, maybe it's an appendix. Second thing is maybe it is a tubal pregnancy. Both things are life-threatening. And if you have an appendix that's bursting, you can get immediate care. Nobody's going to ask your primary care provider if it really was a pregnancy. And I suppose you could have an appendix and an ectopic pregnancy. My point is that when you have an ectopic pregnancy, we used to be able to rush people into the emergency room, into the operating room, and get it taken care of. And in this case, we have to, stall the process to get some sort of legislative entity okay the situation. Why should a politician have access to my medical records, have access to the care that I get, and why should a legislative person have anything to do with me whatsoever? This is really very, very crucial to the freedom of women. We have had our rights stripped one by one. And you have to look at my last video to understand what I'm talking about. It is absolutely appalling. I worked in family planning for years, women's health, and it was always a clear case. If somebody needed help, emergency help, we would take them right to the OR. We would send them by ambulance to the hospital if we were not located in the hospital itself. And pro-life is pro-life, pro-choice is pro-choice. But it goes far beyond pro-choice, pro-life, pro-choice, pro-life. It has to do with the basic dignity of a human being. If a person has an advanced pregnancy, maybe like 16 weeks, and discovers that they have a life-threatening situation, the baby, for instance, may have died, or in embryo, or the baby is alive but has multiple anomalies, as they say. Well, nowadays you can't get the baby, you can't have the baby without probably going to another state. And there's a woman who has been talking about this that happened to her. Her whole situation is she couldn't get an extraction of the pregnancy, and she almost died from sepsis. And finally, they were able to remove the baby because it was an emergency situation, and she almost died. And there's a lot of this going on. And don't think you can just stay in your little shell and think, oh, Donald Trump is really cool, and it's a terrible thing that he was indicted. Well, he is convicted, and he needs to be convicted to stop him in his tracks, to stop messing with us. And that's what one of the things I want to talk about. As a nurse practitioner for many years, I was always surprised that there were people in my profession who were pro-life, who didn't believe in abortion. Now, nobody really believes in abortion. That's why they coined the term pro-choice. But because it's a softer word, pro-choice. But nobody really is pro-abortion. We don't believe in having abortion as the number one way of solving problems. And really, abortions are not used as birth control. For many, many years, I'd hear people say, oh, well, these people are just using abortions as birth control. But I have rarely seen it. I have seen it, but I have rarely seen it. People may not understand, or maybe too spaced out to use birth control or whatever it is, or they get swept away by the moment, and then they find themselves pregnant, and then they would have gotten an abortion in the past. Nowadays, they probably wouldn't be able to get one. And this is a choice that we need to give to the individual person. It's their life. It's their choice. Now, choices, it comes down to what is choice in our world, in our lives. We often have to live with the choices that we make. And some of these choices come to bite us in the you-know-what. And that is not what we, may have intended, or we might have regrets for some of the choices that we make. But if a person wants to make that kind of choice, that the choice has to do with having an abortion, or maybe not having an abortion and dying, I don't think that should be a choice either. As medical people, we try to save people's lives. That is our purpose. Now, I know that people have a death wish. People want to die, but our role is to stop these sorts of choices from happening. I worked in crisis intervention for a number of years. I went to nursing school during the day and worked all night on call as a crisis worker to help prevent people from committing suicide. And one night we were called out, and I think we got there, and as I recall, the person had already hung themselves. That was something we were trying to prevent, and maybe that person got away with something that they were happy to get away with. They didn't want us coming in there to save their lives, but that was our job. And that was my job as a nurse in any kind of situation I was in. If somebody was going into cardiac arrest in the hospital, we would do emergency care to bring them back if they could be brought back. And if you even sign a living will, which means that you don't want any heroic actions to be taken to save your life, then you might as well not call 911 people. Stay at home and die. But if you call an ambulance and you have signed a living will, you get into the hospital, nobody really respects it. You get in there and people are going to save your life. That's just the way it works. And so with this situation with women, we need to respect women's right to have a choice about their bodies, and to have legislative entities tell me what to do, tell you what to do. And there are many men who are married, men and women who are married to each other, and they don't like their spouses or their partners to be told what to do with their bodies. This is beyond respect. It's beyond, and it's a Donald Trump thing. The whole, all the courts are packed with right-wing fanatics, and the Supreme Court, or Alito is put out an upside-down flag, which is the flag of insurrection. We can't let these people preside over Donald Trump's January 6th insurrection, and because he's just not. He needs to assume responsibility for all of his crimes. The one that happened yesterday, that's just the beginning, because he is a criminal. I have actually no sympathy for the man, especially because of what has happened to women's rights. It's directly pointed at him. It's his fault. Take a look at the video I did yesterday. I love you all. Bye-bye.